Welcome to the program. Just wanted to take a moment here to thank all of the listeners, everybody who has downloaded this show, subscribed on their favorite podcast platform, or through YouTube, or wherever you get your audio information, entertainment, and services. Really want to thank all of our listeners all over the world. Based here in the United States, I know I have a lot of listeners in the U.S., in Canada, as well as a lot of other English-speaking countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. We have lots of listeners in the Philippines and India. We have listeners all across South Africa. We have listeners in various countries of Europe where English is a strong second language. And we even have listeners throughout Latin America, even though we currently don't offer the program in Spanish. Certainly, we know English is widely understood in the region. And we thank you all everywhere in the world that you've been listening to this program. We can't do anything that we do here without a following, and I have a strong belief that there is a international community of curious minds, people who want to learn more about the world around them, and they want to understand what's happening, and they want to understand the big trends. Remember that the objective of this show and the whole point of doing this program is not to cover the daily headlines. You can get that in any number of your favorite news sources of information. What we do here is step back from the headlines, look at the big pictures, look at the big trends, try to keep you ahead of the next big story out there, and especially those that are going to affect you, your family, your business, your community, or whatever's important to you. If there's a big trend in the world, it's important that you know about it. So I wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the interviews we've done so far in Season 2. And if you have not yet subscribed to the show, you're about 43 episodes behind, but that's okay. It just means there's hours and hours of listening for you to get caught up on, going all the way back to the pilot. And for anybody out there who has not heard the show yet, I encourage you to start with that pilot. We talk about the whole objective of the show, but if you have listened to this program, if you've been a part of our community of curious minds, then you have been ahead of the curve on some important topics. For instance, in episode 11 of our second season, we talked about the path to the presidency for women, and we specifically locked in on Latin America, but there were important lessons for us in the United States, for example, and other parts of the world, including in a country like Mexico that recently did elect their first female president. Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that in the United States, as we record this program in July of 2024, there's been talk of whether a woman could potentially still be a candidate for president of the United States, but what route would they take to get there? Well, as Catherine Reyes Householder told us in that episode, one of the most common paths to make that happen is when women are nominated, not necessarily when they win their party's nomination through an election process. So if you had listened to that show and you were aware of that path, it wouldn't surprise you that it's openly talked about that might be the fastest way for someone to seize that opportunity in the U.S. and why it so far hasn't happened. You have also, if you've listened to our program, been ahead of the curve on cybersecurity issues. Now, we've been reporting on this really since the early episodes, but isn't it interesting that it seems like every day, every week, every month, we get another big news story about something happening with data breaches? Well, episode 7 covered so much of the latest in ransomware attacks and what businesses and institutions need to do to keep themselves safe, to keep themselves protected. We have also been talking about the threats posed by artificial intelligence, both the theoretical and the real world, and how governments are going to respond to this. Well, episode 6, we covered that topic, and we spent a lot of time chewing through the very serious debates that happen within the technology community about the applications of artificial intelligence. And if you had listened to that program all the way back in April of 2024, you would already know this term dual use, that a technology like AI can be used for both civilian and potentially military purposes. Well, this concept is being talked about more and more, and now it's something that's coming into the mainstream of media. We kept you ahead of that topic. How about demographics? Episode 3 of this season was a follow-up episode to one that we had done in Season 1 with Bradley Sherman, the founder and CEO of Human Change. We talked about all kinds of big demographic issues and changes happening in the United States and around the world. Well, it seems to be coming up regularly. It's an election year in the US. It was an election year for the UK, for France, for many countries around the world where demographics and how people vote was a big part of that storyline. It was also an important topic as we think about geopolitical choices and decisions being made around the world, and how that's influenced by the direction of countries and their demographic trends. And in fact, it's a big issue in the United States long-term economically. You hear more and more about people saying that young people need to have more kids to have a future for the country. Well, that might be overdone a little bit, but if you'd listen to this program, you would understand why this is so critically important. And if we go back even further to the very first recording of this season, that we focused on ethics around artificial intelligence and startups and tech companies. So this wasn't just the conceptual, this was also the fundamentals. And those are the kind of shows that you need to get caught up on. And then lastly, all the way back in March of 2024, we had a great conversation with Professor Carlo Ruzza. He's a senior professor of political sociology at the University of Trento School of International Studies. Well, we talked about populism, nationalism, and the rule of law in Europe. So if you'd been listening to that show back in March, none of the election results throughout Europe during their EU elections or local elections in places like France would have come as a surprise to you. Neither the results nor the momentum, even in the United Kingdom, where issues of populism and nationalism and the role of the rule of law were an important part of the debates in that conversation. So why do I say all of this? Well, first of all, I hope that if you've missed any of the programs, and this is the first clip that you're hearing, especially if you're on YouTube hearing us for the first time, I kind of want you to know what you've been missing out on. And you have a whole season to get caught up. Nothing that we shared in those shows is still not real today. That's the reason we do these programs, to make sure that we are staying ahead of the curve so that we have evergreen programs, that even if you missed them 6 months ago and you catch them now, they're still relevant. But if you listen to them as they come out, we're keeping you ahead of the trends, ahead of the topics, and making sure that you're the most informed person in the room when these things start to pop up in mainstream media, and you can put the headlines of every day into the bigger context of all these huge, big megatrends that are happening all over the world that are important for us to understand so that we can put context around the daily headlines. We have all of these episodes available now anywhere you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, the Odyssey app, Libsyn, and truly any of your favorite podcast platforms. And if you're a YouTuber, our entire podcast series and library is available. Right now, that's up to 44 episodes. It's all available on YouTube. You can just put it on autoplay if you'd like. We also make clips available if you'd just like to get a preview. It's been a lot of fun doing this program. We've got a few more interviews lined up here in Season 2, and then we'll take a little break so you can all get caught up on all of these shows. The very nature of what we do is that we're not trying to cram 52 weeks worth of programs into a year. We want you to have time to thoroughly listen to our guests and their expertise, to digest the content, to put it into the context and ask your own questions and do your own research. But if our goal has been to keep you ahead of the headlines and to keep you interested in all the big trends, the big topics, the things that you haven't been thinking about yet, to keep you one step ahead of everyone else, I think we've accomplished that this year, and our wonderful group of guests has helped us navigate all of these big topics. We'll keep at it. We'll keep growing our community of curious minds, and I look forward to talking to you all again real soon. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for being part of the community. Please share this with friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, and anytime, anywhere that you see the program, just hit that subscribe button and make sure that you follow us for the very latest downloads and the latest episodes. Till next time, this is Brian J. Matos, encouraging you all to once again stay curious.